Hi everybody, welcome to a new episode of Chasing 80s Toys. And on today's video, I have a wonderful guest for us. I'm lucky to call her my friend. Um, I'm sure all of you know her voice from those 80s cartoons we watched back in the 80s and loved so much. Her name is Sharon Noble. Here she is.
Hello.
Hi Sharon.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here with us today. And
Oh, my pleasure. I,
I,
I, I look forward to it.
it's wonderful to have you here with us and with people watching. And yeah, we're going to take a trip down memory lane and
Uh,
see. A lot of people will know you as an actor on those 80s cartoons we love, but there's so much more to you. And maybe in today's video, we can share that with the watchers. Who
okay.
is the
Yeah.
character behind that voice in the cartoon that most people know you from? Because there's a bigger picture there.
There is a bigger picture. Yes, there is.
Well, let's start to the beginning. That seems like a good place to start. Can you tell us something from where you were from and how was growing up as a
Yeah.
kid for you, like in those early days of your life?
Well, I was born in Longview, Texas, and Longview, Texas is about half an hour from Louisiana. My mother's parents were French, and they lived in Louisiana. And my father's family was Irish, and they were living in Sarasota, Florida. But
Mm,
for some reason, best known to them, we lived in Texas. So I grew up in Texas in a little town of about 60,000 people.
mm,
But it was a town where we had a symphony orchestra. We had a ballet company. We had opera singers coming in about every 3 months and doing concerts. So it was a really upscale little town. And so my mother put me in ballet classes there because she thought I
mm.
had flat feet. I was 3 years old and she thought I had flat feet, so she was going to put me in ballet classes and thinking I would be a ballerina. So, but we could have that in Texas. Yeah, it was it
Wow.
was it was um, it was interesting because it was small. We had to make our own pleasures, as it were. So,
Mm.
so when the symphony orchestra would come through, everybody in town would go to the concerts. And so, as a result, we didn't have any really stupid people in Longview because everybody was interested in learning. So it was that kind of an environment.
Ah,
And
yeah.
and I remember when I was about 5 years old. I may be skipping to some of one of your questions, but um, there was a grocery store was down the road from where we lived, and every time I would go in there, and of course this is what my hair was like right from birth, and the owner of the grocery store, Mr. Heflin, would always say, "Well, hello there. How are you doing today?" And he would say, "Hey, Hollywood, how are you doing?" And I would think, Hollywood. He always called me Hollywood. He never used my name. Hey, Hollywood. And people would say, and so, little girl at 5 years old, what are you going to be when you grow up? And I would say, what do you mean when I grow up? I already am. And they would say, well, you are what? I'm an actor. And they would say, you're a little girl. And I would say, I'm an actor. That's who I am. That's what I am. And so that's what got me started.
Wow.
This may not even pertain to what your question was, but
5 years old, and you already knew from
I
this
knew,
is.
I knew from the start, knew from the start. Well, because I
Mm.
had already been performing on stage with the ballet class. Remember?
Yeah.
I'm going to ballet lessons with the little tutu and all the sparkly things, and you're doing little things like this, right? And I
Mm.
liked it. I liked being up on the stage, and people are going, "Oh, yeah." And I thought, I'm hooked, right? They cast out, I'm the fish, they caught me. So that was my plan. I had the plan from the time that I was 5. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
And were you also influenced a bit by what you saw in the movies, or I don't know
Oh,
if you
yeah.
watched a lot of TV at the time?
Oh, oh no, my father wouldn't let us watch TV. He wanted us
Mm.
to read. He said, if you want to occupy yourself, read a book, read a book. So I had to sneak over to my friend's house to watch TV. Let's do it. But it was very interesting. Yeah, and as you and I share an interest, Burt Lancaster, right? All Gregory Peck,
Mm.
Betty Davis, all those, I said, oh yeah, that's what I'm going to do when I get a little bit older. And fortunately, when I was in the second grade,
Hmm.
um, one day I saw another teacher from the third grade. She came knocking on our door. My teacher went out to talk to her, and when she came back, she said that was the third grade teacher. They're doing a play this year, but they can't find anybody to play the fairy, the main character who goes around and teaches everybody something. And they've asked me if we can have you, if you would let them, you would do this. And I said, I'm there. Hey, I'm there. And I said, yes, but can I wear my ballet shoes? And she said, absolutely. You're a fairy. You can wear ballet shoes. And I wore one of my costumes. I was on the road. That's what I was doing.
So
8 years old.
interesting. Wow,
8 years
you were already preparing for that role at the
old.
time, thinking from these are my qualities. This is, I have that ballet background. I'm going to use that for this role.
Yeah,
Prepare. It's You were a professional back then.
I thought so. And also we had a thing that we did at home. We had a piano. So, and my
Mhm.
mother played the piano. And we sang, my father, my mother, and I sang songs all the time. So she would play the piano, and I would sing the soprano, my father
Mm.
would sing the bass, and my mother would sing the mezzo in between. And so we sang, I would say 3 or 4 times a week. And my father had a recording, not a, back in those days when I was
Mhm.
little, you had the big vinyls, right? And if you
Mhm.
had the right machine, you could record onto those vinyls. And now you have a recording of whatever it was you did. um, and he had one of those. And up until the time that my mother died, she still had that. I don't know
Mhm.
where it is now, but it's me tap dancing. Now I didn't learn tap dancing, but I thought I was a tap dancer. So my mother bought me tap shoes, and I would tap. It wasn't real dancing; it was just what a little kid would do. But I thought I could do everything. I thought I could sing and dance and play the guitar and all those things. I
Wow.
couldn't, but I thought I could.
Tap dancing like Fred Astaire and
Like
Ginger Rogers
that's
and
right. You got it. Oh, and what I did when I got to be about 10 is we had a big garage out in the back, and I would put little boards for people to sit on, and
Mhm.
then I would invite all the neighborhood kids to pay a nickel to come and see me sing and dance. So I would turn on the radio in the garage, and then I would sing and dance, and they would watch me. And that was my idea of business. Then I would get a nickel from every one of them.
Wow.
So if I got 10 people, that's 10 5 cents that I got. So I'm already being paid to sing and dance. But
Wow.
that's it. So
Yeah. And how were your parents in that? Were they supporting that in that
oh,
creative way,
they
or?
they loved it.
Yeah.
They loved it. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I still have scrapbooks of when I was in fifth grade and sixth grade. In sixth grade, we did operettas every year. I don't know if they do that in your country, but every year in our grammar schools, they do a show,
Hmm.
and it's usually at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And that year, it was called the White Gypsy. And so it was about a person who wasn't a gypsy, a princess, and she gets kidnapped by the gypsies and taken off, and the gypsy king wants to marry her, and she doesn't want to marry him, blah, 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 like that. So who wanted to be the white gypsy? Of course. So we had competitions, and each girl had to get up and sing. Well, I was not a singer, but there was a girlfriend of mine who was, and I thought, well, they're going to give it to her. They're going to give it to her. They didn't, because who could act it? I could act it. I might be able not be able to sing it as well as she did, but I can act it. And what she does is she sings. So she stands up and she sings. But when I get up and sing, I'm doing it, whatever it is. So
Your first audition?
yeah.
Could this be? Yeah.
Yeah, that was my first audition.
Amazing,
So
amazing.
it was fun.
Great.
And and then when I was 11, I went on the radio. They put me on the radio to do radio drama.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah,
Using the voice already.
using the voice already. I remember we were doing one, and this is what much later, back when I was a teenager. and I had to be Queen Victoria,
Mhm.
and then I had to be an Indian woman who wanted the ring, the Hope Diamond. You know the Hope Diamond?
No.
No, the Hope Diamond. It's a diamond about this big,
Mhm.
and it it can't belong to anybody. That's the rule. It can't belong to anybody, so it has to be in a vault somewhere. But when they first discovered it, I think it was discovered. If I'm wrong, people out there, that's tell me. But this is what I heard,
Mhm.
that it was found and in India, and of course at that time England ruled India,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it got to Queen Victoria, and that's where it ended up. And then after she died, they don't know really whatever happened to it. But anyway, it was
Mm.
a big diamond. So I had to be Queen Victoria, and I had to be the Indian woman. And I thought, okay, how do I do that? So I did the Queen quite like this. Hello, little girl, and where are you from? I thought, okay, that'll go. Then I looked
Mhm.
over, and the guy said, yeah, that was okay. And then I said, I come from my town, India. I want to tell you about beautiful thing. And he says, well, I mean, it's okay, but we'll go with it. So, I'm like 15 years old and not really sure what I'm doing. But you go where your heart is. That's what you do.
Definitely, definitely. And this is all you at a young age because you were already, and that's my second question. We're going to talk a bit on the road to becoming an actor,
Hmm.
actress. And yeah, I wanted to know if you were inspired by, you told me you didn't watch TV at home as a
Hmm.
kid, but with friends.
Hmm.
I don't know if you ever went to the cinema or were allowed to go to the cinema
Oh,
and watch on.
every Saturday we had a double feature, and I would go to double feature. And in those days, you didn't have to leave when the movie was over. You could just stay there and watch it again and
Oh,
again and again until it was time to go home. Yeah. So that's what I did. And I did it every Saturday and every Sunday. And we had three movie theaters in this little tiny town. We had three movie theaters.
mhm.
So I was able to satisfy all of this. And you're going to ask me now, is there any actor who really caught my eye? Susan Hayward. Susan Hayward. Because at that time, I was a teenager, right?
Mhm.
She looked similar to me. I looked similar to her. But the hair, right? She had the same hair.
Mhm.
And she had the voice of my mother. That's a lower voice than mine, and I liked that. So yeah, I liked her. But no, the rest of them didn't. What my point of view always was, and I know how this sounds, I really do, but I have to tell you the truth. I thought, "Psh, I can do that. You're good. You're doing a really good job, and I love what you're doing. But psh, I can do that. I thought I could sing and dance and play the harmonica and everything. I
Mhm.
can't, but I thought I could. So I thought I would try it. And as it turns out, some of the things that I thought I couldn't do, I ended up doing because it was not that it was spectacular, not an opera singer, but one of the things that makes this work is that you can sing a song to. Oh, I have to tell you something. I have to stop right there and tell you something interesting, okay? Or I'll forget.
Yes.
Brendan, when we were still living in Toronto. You'll have to bring me back to where I was because I will forget. Um, he was he got a telephone call one day, and he said it was a woman who was producing a big musical, and she would wondered if he would be interested in uh, being in the show. And he said, well, what is it? He said, well, can you tap dance? She said, can you sing? And he said, of course I sing. Yes, and he did. He's a good singer. He did a lot of musicals. And she said, and can you tap dance? And he did this. I love this. He said, just a minute. And he said to me, Bobo, can I tap dance? And I said, what steps? What steps? Time step. I said, yeah, you can do that. Okay, yeah, I can do that. Okay, thank you. And then he said, what is time step? Because he couldn't do it. He couldn't dance. I said, well, you're going to learn it before you go there. So we went out and bought him some tap shoes, and he went and he did the show, and he tap danced, and he tap danced upstairs and downstairs and all around the world. And then he had to sing because it was a musical, and he
Hmm.
sing. And he said to me, he called me on the phone and he said, Bobo, I have a song here that doesn't have a melody. And I said, sweetheart, all songs have a melody. That's what they're all about. And he said, well, this one doesn't. There's no melody at all. And I said, Brendan, sing it for me. And he said, well, I can't. It doesn't have a melody. And as it turned out, it was just a regular, normal song, but it had some odd movements in it. But I thought, that's Brendan. It doesn't have a melody. I can't sing it. And I have saved that in my mind because it was one of the sweet things. He called me Bobo. I can't sing this song because it doesn't have a melody. I think it's funny. I'm sorry. I don't know what I was talking about before, but you can remind me.
No problem, no problem. Beautiful story.
Yes.
Now we're on the road of you becoming an actress, and I think by the time we get to those 80s, and we're approaching Mask.
Uh-huh.
um, what was the road towards that in the 80s for you? Let's start early 80s. Where
Well,
were you with your career at that time, and what were you doing, and where were things going when you went into the 80s?
okay. Uh, Brendan and I got married in 1980,
Wow.
and we were in Toronto, and we were both acting, working as actors, mostly stage actors, mostly. A little bit of radio and a lot of commercials. We did a
Mm.
lot of commercials. Um, and there were that was the height of activity in Toronto at that time. There were something like 5 or 6 major theaters, and they were working all the time. So there was always work available. And
Hmm.
then if you didn't want to work in town, you audition and you go work in another area of the country. Go out to Saskatchewan or BC or one of the other ones. So there was always work available, and we worked constantly, constantly. If he wasn't working, I was working. And he was out of town or I was out of town, and we were doing. Oh, we also did billboards.
Mm.
Uh, I have photos of us doing on billboards. You drive downtown, oh, that's Sharon, or we were doing photo work where where you wait for the bus, the little shack where you wait for the
Yeah.
bus. Well, I would have either my picture there or Brendan's picture would be there, or in the subway. You go in the subway, and on the walls of the subway, Brendan. There's Brendan, doing stock photography for advertising. So we did a lot of that, and and Brendan did a lot of singing gigs because he could sing. He could actually
Mm.
sing, and I would go in if it was not very good singing, then I could do it. But there was a photographer who liked to use both of us. I don't know why, but whenever he had something that had a man and a woman, he would either call me or Brendan. So we did that. Um, we did some teaching actually,
Mm.
very limited because I didn't really enjoy teaching. I thought I'm giving all of my secrets away to younger people, and they're going to grow up behind me and they're going to take the work. So I thought, don't like teaching. We did that, and then we did some voiceover work.
Hmm.
That's We did some translating. We didn't translate it, but that when you translate in from one language into English, now you have somebody go in and do the English, and it has to match exactly. You know that, right?
Hmm.
And so we did a little bit of that. I found it very difficult, but Brendan found it easy. I don't know why he did, but he found it very easy. And he had a variety of voices that he could use, and that's how we really got started doing voices. We really hadn't
Mm.
thought about it that much before. And so that was up until 1984. And in October of 1984, he just said to me one day, he said, I want to go to California. I said, really, you do? He said, yeah. And what had happened was that I don't know how this is in your country, but actually, even in this country, but certainly in Canada, you start working as an actor at, this level, and then you move
Hmm.
up and you move up and you move up. And if you move up, and there's a certain point at which there is no more up,
Hmm.
and that's where you're going to be working. That's the top of the ladder. And the top of the ladder in Canada is nothing like the top of the ladder in California. It's very different. So we thought, sure, why not? Why? What do we got to lose? So we just got on a plane and we came to California. We had a friend here who was already here, had been working, and he was playing Zorro. Yeah, if you ever watched the Zorro series, well, that was Duncan. Yeah,
Mm.
they shot that in Spain, I think. I'm not sure. Um, but yeah, that was his best friend. So he
Oh,
said, "Come on,
wow.
down, you can stay with us." So we stayed with them for about 6 months until we sort of got things going. But the story of how we started working on the Mask series was that we had gotten there on a Tuesday, and the first thing we wanted to do was go to the beach. So we went to the beach, and at the beach we ran into some friends of Duncan's, and he introduced us. And this one guy said, "Oh, you're from Toronto." We said, "Yes." He said, "I've got a play that I wrote that's running in Toronto right now." And we said, "We know. We have friends who are in that show." And he said, "Really? Oh, okay. Well, what are you actors?" "Yes, we're actors." He said, "Do you do voiceover?" We said, "Yeah, we do voiceover." And he said, "There's an audition for a cartoon series,
Mm.
and they are looking for Canadian actors, but you can't be SAG yet." So I said, "Well, we won't join SAG until after." Right? It's okay. So we went to the audition. I went separately. Brendan went separately. We didn't say we were married. We didn't have the same name.
Mhm.
And then we got a telephone call saying, "Okay, you're in. That's it. There you go." And within a week, we were in the studio, and it was such fun. It was such fun, but we didn't know the other actors. So then we were meeting different. We met Doug, and we met. We didn't meet Brian because he wasn't there. We met
Mhm.
Mark, and Mark is still a really dear friend. And then there was Graham. And Doug was so helpful because if one of us would say, "I can't do that accent," he would say, "I can do it." I thought, "Okay, do it. Show me." So whenever we were in trouble, we'd say, "Doug, hey, how about this voice? Give us a voice for this one." And that's how we got started doing. That's how we finally landed here and continued here.
The gang got together then
We
in
did,
'85. We're talking '85 here, and
yeah. And we finished them. Actually, we arrived in November, and we started working in December.
mm,
So it actually was 85 and a little bit of 86 because and they were working. We were working every day in the
mm,
studio, and we would get our scripts for uh, the next day, the night before, and sometimes you wouldn't. And sometimes we would get a script. Oh, there was something interesting about the script. They didn't want anything that suggested sexuality because this is for children, right?
mhm,
And our scripts contained the drawings that came from Japan. So that was sent in usually every day. And in one of them, Vanessa had a shirt that had like came down like this, right?
yeah,
And there was a little note saying, no, it says, I've forgotten how they phrased it in Japanese, but the idea was, do not show the, and he said the mammary glands. And I thought the mammary glands. Okay. Don't show the mammary glands.
okay,
So they had to send it back and have another drawing with Vanessa with her thing up to here, right? So you don't see anything.
yeah,
And it was fun. Yeah, that was fun. But we finished it well before the summer. We finished it sometime around, I think, February or March,
mm,
and we had a huge party, and we had then we had Brendan and I and Mark and no and Doug started getting work from other companies because they had seen the briefs for this thing, and so then we got called to do some dubbing, and we got called to do some translating. And so you never knew what was coming next. You'd get a call.
mm,
And as a matter of fact, I got a call about 2 days after the beach, and it was from a woman that I don't know. And she said, "You've been referred to me, or I've been referred to you." She said, "There's a movie, a Schwarzenegger movie. It's called Red Sonja. You may have seen Red Sonja, right? It's Schwarzenegger playing the right, and
Yeah.
in it, he meets this woman, Red Sonja, and she's as rugged as he is. Well, in the very beginning of it, she has a sister, and the sister runs away from this temple where she had to be one of the maidens of the temple, and there was danger, there was war, so she ran away, and but she got shot with an arrow in her back, and she was dying. So they didn't like. She had a long story to tell to Red Sonja, but they didn't like her voice because she didn't speak English. She
Mhm.
spoke really bad. She was from Yugoslavia or someplace, and she spoke really bad English. So they needed somebody who had an American voice. So they said, go over to MGM and audition for this director. Okay, well, all right. So I went over. He gave me a script, and he said, okay, bing, 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 bing. And he said, okay, we'll do it again. Bing, 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 bing. Okay, fine. He stopped. And I went, phew, I got it. And he said, well, you didn't exactly get it exactly, but you're hired. So
Okay.
if you ever watch Red Sonja, that's my voice on The Dying Woman.
Incredible. And you heard it here first.
Yes, you heard it here first. So
I
watch
did.
Red Sonja.
But getting together with that small cast, because in the beginning there were five of you and Brennan who did Scott Tracker. He
Yeah,
recorded separate, right? It
yeah,
wasn't.
yeah. He did because that was his first gig. He had never done any voice work, right? He was a kid.
Hmm.
And so Marcia Goodman, who was our director, would take him on the days that we weren't shooting. She would shoot his stuff on a different day. And that way she could stop him and say, no, a little louder, or a little longer, or a little
Hmm.
higher. And that would have taken up time during our session. So it worked better to have him do it on a different day. Then they just mushed it together. And the whole thing worked beautifully. I thought we never saw him except when we had done half of the season. We had a
Yeah.
big party and there's a cake and everything. We have a picture of that, and we have Brendan was in that, and his brother, who is now a big hot dog singer.
Yeah.
His brother was a little tiny boy, and I was sitting in a chair when we were eating the cake, and he came over and he put his arm around me and laid his head on my shoulder like that. And I said, who are you? And he said, I'm Brendan's brother. I said, oh well, hello. He said, hello. That was it. Nice
So,
little boy. Yeah, sweet little boy.
oh
And
wow.
yeah. So, ¿qué pasa? What else?
What else? Well, yeah, Mask was going good, but I'd like to go more into what you did besides the main characters. I think a lot of the viewers who know Mask know you did Vanessa,
Hmm.
Warfield, and Gloria.
Hmm.
But mm, I don't know if everybody knows it, how much more work you did on
On the
that
show.
show.
Oh, okay.
There's a
There's a
plethora.
lot. Yes,
There's a lot. Give
right.
us a load of
Yes.
what you did on
Okay.
that show.
I did every woman, every single woman, every woman. I did every child, boy or girl. I did every child except for Scott, right? I did all of the animals. If the animals had to make a sound, I'm making it. I did a cuckoo clock. Yeah, cuckoo clock. Yeah,
Yeah.
did that. Um, I did a cat. I did a bear. I think I did a monkey. I can't remember all of them, but I did all the animals.
Oh yeah.
So the guys didn't have to worry. All they did were the guys.
Yeah.
They were fine. And then I would see the script and I would say, I'm supposed to do an anaconda, a big snake. I'm supposed to do a snake. And how do I do a snake? And they said, well, we don't know. You figure it out. So every time it was something different, I would say, what is a panda, big panda? What does he say?
Yeah.
We don't know. Work it out.
It wasn't only the kids and the animals, but even a certain computer in Mask headquarters that got a voice and an
Oh, that's
identity of its own.
okay. This is funny. So when I did the audition, I did the voice the way that you heard it, right?
Hmm.
And I wanted it to be different from the one on Star Trek because the one on Star Trek had a different uh, way of. She talked more like a person, and I thought
Hmm.
I want this to sound for kids. We want it to sound, like a machine, a machine. So I wanted to make it sound like a machine. And so I did it, and they liked it. And I said, cool, that's good. And then here's the problem. I forgot what level. Go down here, 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 here. Where did I do it? Where did I, right? So I would go into the studio every time and say, could somebody do a playback from yesterday so I can find out where my voice was? Because
Yeah.
it was just whatever, chance, luck of the draw. Um, so you may hear it sometimes if you're playing them. You may hear one that starts at right about here, and another one that starts right about here, and one that starts right about here. Usually it was right about here, right at that, because I wanted it very different from Vanessa, because I wanted her to come across big and low and bad. So she was easy. She was the easy one. But actually, what was difficult is I thought, oh, let's see, how do I do a regular voice? Just a regular voice. And I'd lost the regular voice. So one of the guys just spoke to me, and I replied, and he said, that's the voice. I thought, okay, fine. Because
That will do.
we lose touch. We actually lose touch with our own voice. And you have to think, wait a minute, when I open my mouth and talk, as a matter of fact, we were around in the studio like this, and each one had their own microphone, like here and here and here and here and here and there. And one time I wanted to do a man voice because there was a place that I think it took place. I think it was in the Netherlands actually, and it was the guy the dike has broken.
Yeah,
Right?
I
Okay.
remember it.
Okay. Well, one of the guys who lives there, one of the neighbors, comes running and saying, the dike is broken, the dike is broken, the dike is broken. And I said, I can do that. And they said, no, Sharon, it's a man. And I said, I know, but I can do that. And they said, yeah, but Sharon, it's a man. You can't do a man's voice. I said, I can do a man's voice. I can do a skinny man's voice, a guy who has a high voice, right? I could do that. And they said, Sharon, we have all these guys here to do this, right? And I said, yeah, but they've done all these other voices today. I didn't get to do so many voices. So I want to do this voice. And they said, and I heard them talking, behind the screen, and they said, okay, you can do it. So I said, oh, okay. And I said, the dike has broke, the dike has broke, the dike has broke. And I said, the dike has broke, the dike the broke, is dike the broke, is broke, right? All that. And they said, okay, that's fine, that's good, okay. What they did was they just erased my voice and had one of the so I never heard it.
Anything to keep you happy. Let's go on with production, all right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, but that's a fun episode because I come from the Netherlands. That was my country, and it's such a stereotypical country with the tulips and the windmills and everything that's stereotypical about the Netherlands that was in that show, and that's what makes it fun for me. Still today, I can laugh about that.
But the funny thing is, if they wanted to shoot it again with all of us, they could still do it because I know voices change as you get older. They get a little deeper. But we can do, I'm not saying we're voice actors because we do all acting, but we can do voices. So you say, well, you have to do the voice of an 18-year-old. We can do a voice of an 18-year-old. I want you to do the voice. I mean, this woman, I told you about the audition last night. She had to be an alcoholic smoker. So she had to talk like that. She talked like Vanessa, and that was her regular tone of voice. Now, Vanessa's voice was stronger, but this woman, she had her big cigarette. Yeah. So you come back because you want something. You want some work, don't you? You want some work. I don't have any work for you. Maybe I'll see you later. Come back another time. Okay. Okay. Shut the door. Right. That's who she was. But that's not Vanessa. Vanessa is still different from that. But as you get older, you can do the older voices. You can do the younger voices because you remember.
Yeah. How did you got to the, and I'm going to talk about Gloria Baker for a little bit.
Okay.
How did you get to that character at the time?
Oh, for me, she was a teenager. So in my mind, she was a teenager. She probably was early 20s. Maybe she was even 25. But I like to present her, the voice, because I think she was really enthusiastic, right? Everything.
Yeah.
Hey, let's do that. Let's do that. Then you've got Vanessa who says, "Oh, shut up, knock you on your butt, get out of my way." So to make that really, yeah. Ah, oh, Chris, do you know how many people have told me that Vanessa was their favorite character?
Yeah.
A number of people said, "Well, what about Vanessa? What about Vanessa?" I say, "Oh yeah, Vanessa. She she was the one." And and people would say, "Did she have a thing with the?" Then they would name different guys. Did she did with him? I say, "No, I don't think so." Well, did she have anything with him? And I don't think so. Well, who did she have a thing with? Well, nobody, as far as I know. This is a
Yeah.
kids show, right? So
Yeah.
she was just alone. Um, but yeah, she was fun. She was the most fun. But Gloria, I think Gloria had a lot of energy, so I
Yeah.
wanted to show that. Um, I would like to have shown her doing things like getting so excited that she would interrupt people, but that wasn't in the script, so we couldn't do that. But I thought she's the kind of person who would say, yeah, but we could do, yeah, we could do that, but then we could also do this. You know, we could try that, and then we could do this. That's what I
Mhm.
wanted for her, but it sort of messed up the script, and so I really couldn't. And I regret that because she would have been fun. And as a matter of fact, there are people who tell me that Gloria was their favorite, and I think, how could she be your favorite? I didn't get to do much with her, but they liked her. So we didn't want to do anything that the children
Yeah.
could pick up on because we knew that these were going to be small children, you know,
Mhm.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe 11, maybe. But when you reach 12, do you still watch Matt Tracker? I don't know. Would you?
I did. I
Did you?
did. I did. I never stopped enjoying those. Yeah. It was a
Well,
very good cartoon, and it had one of the best soundtracks
yeah.
made that. And the animation, which came from Japan,
As far as I know, it was Japan. But
yeah,
that's what we knew that came from Japan.
that was high quality
That
animation. Like
was.
compared to other stuff that was out there at the time, this, yeah,
Yeah,
that was.
and it wasn't done quickly and slop. It wasn't sloppy. They took
Mm,
their time, and that's why we would get a script that say, "Well, I'm sorry that the pictures are not available yet. They'll send them
mm,
tomorrow." And it's because they were taking their time, making sure it was absolutely correct. If that had been done in the United States, they would have said, "Okay, well, here's the idea. This is what it is," and it's sort of like that. But it's not sort of like that. It is exactly like this, and we had to match exactly what it was
yeah,
that we were looking at. Um, and we also did something else too. I don't know how other voice actors do this, but because we were doing, and I did the same thing on Dennis the Menace and on
mm,
Pancakes, the Popples and any other Ghostbusters, all of those.
mm,
They're for children, right? And every time I did one of those, my thoughts were, this is for children. So let's do this so that children will get it, will appreciate it, and will find it fun.
mm,
So you have to really think about your audience. Well, you know that you're an actor. You know that you're who are you acting for? Not for yourself. You're acting for your audience, and you
mm.
want to reach that audience.
The voice work.
It's always
It's a wonderful job.
yeah,
Most of us don't get rich of it. We do it because we love it.
yeah. Oh boy, are you? That's right. We never think about getting rich. We think about, did I get my audience? Did
Mm,
I did I tell them something they didn't know? Did I give them a gift? Did I give them a gift tonight? And it didn't cost them anything. That all they did was come and sit in the theater or watch the movie or whatever it
mm,
is. I will tell you one thing that digresses because people laugh when I tell them this. Brendan and I did about 7 plays together before we ever really got together. We just kept doing it.
mm,
We found out that we were the same person. We really were the same person. You count everything down this way and you say, oh, it's the same thing over here. We're the same. We were doing a play, and in it, we were husband and wife, and we were adults. We have grown children, and our son had gone away to sea, and he had died. And we had just had a wedding party for the daughter, and he picks up the clothes that the sailor has brought to show that our son has drowned at sea and he is in fact dead. And
mm,
so I come out and he shows me the package. He doesn't have to tell me anything. I see it. I come jumping out because we've had a party, and he shows me the package. The spotlight comes on him and I see it. And I completely change. I fall back against the door and I can't breathe. right? He doesn't do anything. He takes me by the hand and he puts me in a chair downstage, right in front of the audience where all the footlights are here, right? And then he stands behind me, and he said, "What shall I do?" And he says, I say to him, just say the Lord's Prayer, but say it in the old Scots because we're Scottish people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he knows how to do Scots, so he was doing it in Scots. So they're doing the Lord's Prayer, and I'm sitting here, tears rolling down my face. Oh, tears rolling down my face, but I don't have a word to say, nothing. And then I hear what I'm waiting for. I can't snap my fingers. Here. You snap your fingers for me, Chris.
I never learned how to do that either. I can't whistle and I can't snap my fingers.
I can't whistle. Okay, snap, snap, snap. I hear snap over here and snap over there, snap over there, snap over there, snap over there, and I think, yeah, I got them, because that sound is a woman in the audience opening her purse and taking out a Kleenex and then
Yeah.
closing it again, snapping it shut, so she can cry along with me.
Yes.
And that's what acting is about.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. Best story of my life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is a wonderful profession. It's so much more than a job to be creative
It's a
like
calling.
that. We were talking earlier about a lot of people. Yeah, I think Vanessa is one of my favorite characters on the show as well. And there's another bad guy on the show that was a favorite of mine as well. And he was played by a good friend of yours still to this day, Mark Halloran.
Oh,
He did
yes.
the voice of Sly Rex, if
Iraq.
memory serves me
Yes.
well.
Yes. That was interesting because he had never done just voices. His act that he used to do, and he won a big contest, and that's how he got to the United States. You know that, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
No, I don't know that bit. No, I don't.
Yeah. He there was a big competition in I think it was here in California. I've forgotten the name of it, but he flew down to do his act to compete, and he won. And he won some, like $1,000 or something, and then was referred to other people for other work. So, but he really wasn't an actor. He did voices, and he loved Jack Nicholson. So who do you think Sly Rax sounds like?
There you go.
That was he said to Marcia, our director,
Yeah.
she said, how are we going to do Sly Rax? And he said, well, and he did Jack Nicholson, and she said, bingo, that's it. That's it. And because he gave Sly Rax the same personality as Jack Nicholson also, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so the whole thing worked beautifully for him. And he was so relieved because he was nervous. He was the youngest one, as I think I told you before. He was the youngest one in the group,
Yeah.
and the least experienced one, except for, well, yeah, T-Bob, I guess. Graham was also relatively inexperienced, but yeah, that's how he did it. He just said,
Wow.
well, I can do Jack Nicholson. So they said, okay, do it.
Yeah, and he got to play against himself,
Yes.
Cliff Dagger and Sly Rex. That you
Right.
can see them as a comic duo.
Yeah. They
He
didn't
did
get
both.
along.
I don't think many people who don't know realize that there were just, at most of the seasons, there were, 5 of you and then Brennan in a separate studio doing Scott Trekker. But so 6 of you doing the show. And then for the last racing series season, Brian, George, did a few voices for that last season. But such a small cast, such a range of voices, a diversity, so many characters like Doc Stoney did, Matt Tracker, Hondo McLean, Bruce Sato, Dusty Hayes, Bruno Shep. I probably forget a whole lot of them, but that's one person doing all that voices.
Yeah. And one of those was a black guy. And I said, how do you do a black guy without offending the black viewers? And he did. He did a beautiful job, I thought. And in the very last, the last 20 that we did, I think it was, one of Brendan's characters that they added was a French one, a French Canadian.
Yeah. Jack Lafleur.
Lafleur.
Sacre bleu.
Yes.
He said it's so much better. Mon Dieu, Matt.
That's right. Well, French was not Brendan's strong suit, I can tell
Yeah,
you. But fortunately, we had friends in Toronto who were
yeah,
from Quebec and did and spoke English with a bit of and also as I told you, my mother's parents were
yeah.
French, and so she knew a little bit of French. They didn't use it at home, but they knew enough that they could talk a little bit. So she talked with them. Actually, she had come to stay with us for the summer,
Hmm.
and so she was able to help him through with some of it. Um, yeah, and that gives the kids out there the idea that everybody is welcome. Everybody is the same. We are in our hearts. We are the same. We're
Yeah.
just people, and I didn't find that in any of the other TV series or kids.
No, oh,
Anyway.
like I said, only G.I. Joe had that going, and Mask, and those are the only two that pop out really for me that had that really strong. Uh, yeah, like you said, yeah, Bruce Sato, the Japanese guy. That's another one from Dogstone.
Mhm,
Amazing how he did it at that time.
mhm.
It must have been so much fun when those voices came
Oh,
for the first time in the studio that you heard
yeah,
Bruce Sato or with his wisdom
yeah.
lines. Who wrote that? Was that all written for him, or did he made up some of them himself? That you know that you put. Did you
Ah,
get to put anything in yourself in that script,
no,
or?
no, nothing. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. As a matter of fact, from time to time, one of us would say, "Could I just switch that? That it would sound better if I said so and so and so." And they say, "No, no, you have your script. That's
Stick
it.
to it.
That do it.
Stick
Do
to
what
it.
you are paid to do,
We
and
got
do
a
it to
production
the
to make.
right." And time is of the essence. We have to get
Mm,
out because there's a deadline for every one of these. There's a deadline for
yeah.
it. So you've got to come in prepared. And so what you do, what you must do, is and it made it difficult if you didn't get your script until the day that you walked into the studio, you really had some hard work to do. But if you got it the day before, you were expected to be really proficient in that. You know it, you know how to do it, you won't
Hmm.
make any mistakes, blah blah blah. And everybody worked very very hard. We worked very very hard to make sure that everything was exactly as they wanted it. It might not have been what we wanted, but it was what was needed because that's
Hmm.
what the show is about. Um, and, and that calls on acting ability that you may
Hmm.
not know you have. I mean, I thought I could say the dike is broken, right?
Yeah.
I really thought I could do that. And I was so upset when they changed it to a man's voice, but
Who did it? Who did it in the end? Who was that? Was that
I have no idea. They won't tell me.
Mark? No.
They wouldn't tell me. I'd have to ask Mark and
I
Doug
think
and
it. I
say
think it could have
it
been
might have
Mark.
been Mark. Yeah. I will tell you something else about what I did. If it's not too much, if I start stuffing too much stuff, just tell me it's too much.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Uh,
The floor is yours.
because
The
well,
stage is yours.
I told you that my mother put me in ballet classes when I was 3 years old, right?
Hmm.
Well, I thought that I was supposed to be the star. So I would complain if we were doing a big dance number and one of the
Hmm.
girls was supposed to twirl around, right? I would say, "Why is she twirling around and I'm not twirling around? Why can't I be the one that twirls around?" And my mother would say, "You can't." There's a. I'm sure you know this. You know when you have a lot of
Hmm.
cows, and they're out in the field and they're eating the grass. One of those cows has a bell around her neck. She's the leader. So when you call the cows and they start coming home, her bell rings, and that tells us it's big. It tells us that all the cows are coming home, and she's
Hmm.
called the bell cow. Okay, she's the most important one. So my mother would say to me, "Sharon, you cannot be the bell cow every time." And I said, "Why not?" So I stopped taking ballet classes. I started again when I was 15. And eventually, I danced with a dance troupe called the Byron Dancers, and we went all over the southern part of the United States dancing. But then I got married and had my son, and I thought, well, I'll just take him to ballet class with me. Well, it doesn't work. You can't take a baby to a ballet class. So I had to stop with the ballet company. But it was worth it because I got my sweet little boy, um, my first child, and but there were lots and lots of opportunities
Hmm.
in that time. There aren't that many opportunities today as there were then. And that's too bad. I think that's too bad. Um, and all the cartoon series that I see now, they don't seem to have spent much thought behind them and who their audience is going to be. I think it's all about selling toys now. I mean, it was
Mm-hmm.
about selling toys when we did ours too, but
Mm-hmm.
it was more than that, because it was more than that for the actors. We didn't care about how many toys you sold. Doesn't matter to us. What we wanted is we wanted to present a finished product that little boys and maybe girls would enjoy and would maybe learn something from.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe learn how to deal with people, how to treat other people. Those were primary with us. Um, and we weren't working cross purposes with the creators. We were just doing what we could to infuse what we were doing, a message for little children, right? So
Yeah.
that was our point. And it's too bad. I don't think they do that so much anymore. I think it's all about noise, a lot of noise, and guns going off, um, and I don't. I remember doing an episode,
Mm-hmm.
and in it, I was playing a little uh, girl from Louisiana, yeah, and she was very kind to Scott, very kind to him. He wanted something, and I've forgotten what it was, and she said, "That's okay. I know how to get that for you. My grandmother has one of those, and I can take you in to see it, and then you will know how to get one. We're not going to take it from my grandmother, but I'm going to show it to you." So you wouldn't find that in GI Joe,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so sometimes we were able to slip little things in like that. Um, did
There
you
was
ever?
definitely a message
Yeah,
there, and you know, the morale, the norms and values.
yeah,
Also, with, you know, at the end of the cartoon, you always get, you know, look left or right.
that's
Scott
right.
was running over the road, and then Matt Tracker said, "Wait, oh Scott, don't you know that?" Or T Bob is, filling with a fork into a toaster.
Brendan did that one time, and I had to stop him. And I thought, "Don't you remember? Don't you remember what Scott was doing?" And he said, "Oh, shut up." But yeah, it was a toaster. He was going to stick a fork in there. I thought, "You are crazy, man. You are just
Yeah,
crazy."
you know what happened to T Bob when he did that.
Right. Well, we had this really neat thing um, when my son first went to kindergarten.
Mhm.
And kindergarten it was way down at the end of the block, and then you turn the corner, and then over there was the kindergarten. And he could walk to it. It would take him about maybe 10 minutes, maybe a little more than 10 minutes.
Mhm.
And he was 6 at that time, 5 or 6. And the rule was that he would get his teacher to help him cross the street when he was leaving the school, and then he would stay on that side of the street until he got to our house. And that street, he then had to cross the street to get to our house. And he knew because I told him and he listened. I say, before you do anything, you look this way to see if there are any cars, and then you look to see if there are any cars that way, and then you call me because I'll be waiting. And you say, "Mommy," and you do not move. And then I'll come out, and then we'll both look there, and we'll both look there. And then when I say it's okay to cross, you cross. He did that. Not all children do that. They would have simply
Mhm.
run home and come run across the street and blah 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 blah. And I think that we, with the relationship between Scott and Matt Tracker,
Yeah.
if Matt Tracker is teaching his son something, his son learns it and he obeys. And I think that was good for children.
You talked about the toys earlier. The cartoons were an extension of the commercials to sell the toy. We get that, but it became so much more. But did you ever see the toys back then? As- So,
Oh yeah, I know that one. Uh,
Switchblade, yeah.
what do I have? I don't remember. They're in my bookcase
Mm.
because you know Wes Dirksen, right? Wesley?
Wesley, we never met in person, but I know
Okay.
him by name
Okay.
indeed that he's a
Well,
big.
he builds these things, right? And I guess all of you, everybody builds them these days. But what he's done is his whole house is filled.
Yeah.
And he said to me one day, he said, my very favorite is Gloria Baker. And he said, I'll make you a Gloria Baker and send it to you. And I said, well, my favorite was Vanessa. Can you send me a Vanessa? And he said, oh yeah, I can send you a Vanessa. And
Yeah.
he videotapes himself making these things. And it's just, they're all have to be just so perfect.
Yeah.
And I think that's why they were expensive, because they were, I assume they were all well made like that. They may not have been as well made then by the major companies as they are by the individuals now
Mhm.
who make them to perfection. I mean, they are just, they're perfect. Um,
Fans do the best work
they
most of
do.
the
That's
time.
because they
Yeah,
have an investment. Yeah. They
for
care.
sure. But still, like, here's your ride from the cartoon, of course, and
Oh, beautiful
still,
color. Yes.
yeah, it still holds up pretty well. Most of my mask toys I have here are they're still holding up after all those years. You had one of the best vehicles
I
on
thought
that
so.
show.
I thought so. Yes. Uh, I would have, what I would have liked a little bit more would have been, at some point, I would like to have seen Vanessa and Miles
Yeah.
Mayhem. I would like to have seen an episode, or maybe more than one,
Mhm.
where Vanessa gets a little bit too sure of herself. And she starts to maybe say, well, Miles, that's not a good idea. I don't like your idea. I have a better idea than that. I can come
Yeah.
up with something better than that. And then they get into to tussle. That would have been fun. And I think about it because several different fans have
Yeah.
said, did they ever fight with each other? Because she, I mean, she thinks she's something, you know, and I
Mhm.
mean, he knows he's something. But I said, no, as far as I know, they got along really great.
They got along. Vanessa fought a lot with Sly Rex and
Yeah,
with Cliff there, but most of all, Sly Rex and her. You and Mark had
yeah.
some some nice dialogue there all the
I,
time.
th-
But
I think I think Vanessa thought that she was the second in command. She wasn't.
definite.
You know, Joan Crawford, the actress Joan Crawford, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, she was married to the head of Coca-Cola. Okay, he died,
Mm-hmm.
and she became the head of the Coca-Cola Corporation.
Mm.
And the first time she went into a meeting with all of the guys, they were all sitting there. She came in and she didn't sit down. She stood up and she said, gentlemen, I am the head of this corporation now. Anything you want to talk about, you talk to me. Any questions you have, you ask me. And she said, by the way, this is not my first rodeo.
That's brilliant.
So
It's
that would have been good for, well, it might not have worked, but Vanessa could have tried it,
oh yeah,
right? And then maybe who would have, Sly Rax might have jumped up and said, hey babe, no, no, not you, me, I'm the one. If the big guy's not here, I'm in charge. And
yeah.
then they
It
could
would
have a tussle over that for sure.
that would have been fun. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
it would have been fun. But
definitely.
I think maybe they didn't want to show conflict within the group.
There could be that.
Yeah,
Yeah. Let's not try to get it too complicated, but that would have been a wonderful way to go for that story. Yeah.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Who
Well,
do
we
you
did.
keep in who do you keep in contact from your fellow actors from the show? You mentioned Mark is still a
Yeah.
good friend of you.
Oh
You
yeah.
keep in contact.
We do. We had lunch. We had lunch last week. Oh, he called and he said, I found this place. It's a school, a music
Mm.
school. I just stumbled across it. He says they're doing a concert on Saturday night. Would you like to go? And of course, my son and I both like opera music. Well, we all like all music, but it was going to be classical music, right?
Hmm.
And so we said sure. But it's down in Koreatown. And then all of a sudden, here's this big building, and you go inside, and it was magnificent. It was magnificent. I didn't know that Mark liked classical music. I thought I
Mm.
was the only one. And we sat down, and we sat as close to the stage as we could get. My son sat back farther because he said, I that gets into my ears. I don't like to
Mm.
loud. So we sat there, and it was so beautiful. I tell you, I crossed my heart. I cried. I started
Mm.
crying, and I had a Kleenex. I'm thinking, it's just so beautiful. It's just so beautiful, and it was just gorgeous. So that gave me a new idea of who Mark is, and And he's still working on his impressions that he was doing a long time ago.
Yeah.
And he's writing a new script for Christmas time.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, he said it's going to be sort of like Dickens, but not exactly like Dickens. But he said he's having, and so he Skypes me at least 2 or 3 times a week, and we just talk about stuff. Yes, I have lunch or coffee with Doug. Even if he has a few minutes, what he'll do is when he has, and he still works. He lives on one side of town. I live on the other side of town. So
Hmm.
when he has a gig, a job that he's going to do, a voice job, he'll call me and he'll say, "I'm going to be in your part of town on Tuesday at 3 o'clock. How about lunch? How about
Mm.
coffee? Whatever." So we see each other maybe about 5 times a month. I see Mark more frequently than that. Um, I've sort of lost contact with Brian because
Yeah.
he and his wife divorced and he got married and he moved. And I sent him an email. He replied, and then I think I lost. I think it was a wrong email after that. But yeah, I stay in
Mm.
touch with Brian. But Brian was a long time friend before that. And then we've lost Graham. Nobody knows where he is. I've never met uh, Brendan, Brennan. That's his name.
Yeah.
Uh, I guess he's got his own family by now because that's a long time ago. And who else? What else was in it? It was
I think that's everybody, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. We
Doc.
try to touch base as often as we can. Um, when we touch base the most is when we get a note from the Canadian equivalent of
Mm.
SAG, and they'll say, "Oh, you got a residual from M.A.S.K," and we say, "Oh, I got a residual." It'll be $1.50,
Yeah.
$2, maybe $3. And we'll just put it in your account. Okay, fine, put it in there. I don't care. Right? And then we
Yeah.
all start calling each other saying, "Did you get your note? We got a residual." Yeah, I got a residual. Yeah,
It's
I,
crazy, right? If you put
it
them
is.
together, you can go get pizza.
That's right. A piece of pizza. You can't
A
get a whole
piece,
pizza. Yeah,
a slice of pizza.
right,
Yeah.
right. Pizza.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah, you can.
definitely. Yeah.
But yeah, but when we talk, we always talk about, of course, about doing the series, and we always talk about the fact that if they wanted to continue, and they do, I've noticed that on Amazon, you can
Hmm.
get our version of it. You can get the whole package, or you can get any piece of it that you want. But they still are redoing this all over the world. They're doing it in French, they're doing it in Spanish, they're doing it in
Hmm.
Portuguese, all these things. Well, they can't use us for that. So they're using now young people who speak that language. And although I understand that that's a good idea, I still think no, that belongs to us. We're very possessive of this
Yeah.
series
I wanted
because
to ask you about that. Yeah. How do you feel about because
very
it's part of you.
yeah, yeah. It's like your baby. You spent 9 months getting ready to have this baby. Now your baby's born and somebody says, "Oh, we're going to do it." I said, "No, you're not. No, you're not. I worked hard on this thing and it didn't exist before us.
Mm.
No, it came into existence only because of us."
Yeah.
So if you want to do another episode or you want to do another whole series, call us. We're still here. I did a couple of Ghostbusters, and the first Ghostbuster I did you ever watch Rhoda on TV? Rhoda.
What? Help
It's a
me out
it's a,
here.
it's a TV series about. Did you ever watch Mary Tyler Moore?
No, I don't think we
No, you
got
didn't.
that in
Okay.
our area back then. We didn't get a lot of TV channels in the
Okay.
Netherlands until we
Okay.
got satellite TV at a certain
Well,
point.
it was for grown-ups anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Okay. Well, Rhoda lived in this apartment building where there was a doorman down below. Um, and what's his name? Let's say Joe the doorman. Okay.
Yeah.
And he would he would call her on her intercom and say, it's Joe the doorman. There's a guy down here and he says he wants to do this bed. Is that okay? I don't know if that's okay or not. I'd just like to know if you think that's all right because he came here. And she would say, "Shut up, shut up, shut up. What do you want?" Oh well, I guess it's not important. And he would hang up. And everybody loved him. You never saw his face. You just heard his voice.
Mm.
And he was in every episode. And sometimes it would ring and she would say, "Oh, it's going to be the doorman." But she would, "Hello, hello, and so and so and so and so. And that's a problem. What do you think about that?" And she would nothing, hang up, hang up. All right. So I went into the studio and I adored him. Everybody adored him. And his name was Stan Musial. Okay.
Mm.
And I went into the studio to do the episode of the Real Ghostbusters. And one of the guys said, he said, come and sit, come here, sit beside me. So I did. And he said, so you're new? I said, yeah. He said, what's your name? I said, Sharon Noble. He said, hi, I'm Stan Musial. And I said, you're Stan Musial? You're the real Stan Musial? Yeah. Hey, I'm Stan, I'm your doorman, right? I said, I've been watching you for years. I said, everybody adores you. He said, yeah, of course. They all adore me. He died. Unfortunately, he has died,
Uh,
but he was magical. And I thought, this is what it's all about, that you do this and you do that and you that, and you keep yourself skilled. You keep yourself sharp all the time, because in the series that we did, the Mask series, we had a chance to do all different kinds of voices, different pronunciations, different languages. Everything was there. It's like like soup, and you've got all these different things in the soup,
mhm.
and you mix it around, and you get. And I thought that's the beauty of doing voice work, because what's fun about that is they call you and they say you have to do an African Ouija man who's 108 years old, and you say, how do I do that? And you never say, I can't do that. You say, how could I do that? And then the brain starts to go.
Mhm.
The brain starts to go. And that's the fun part. That's the fun, finding it, finding it. And then when you get it, you go, bingo, I got it. I got it. I got it. And it works. And there's the joy. And then when you go in the studio and you do it and you say, fine. And then you listen to it back, and it's right. And you go, that's the joy.
There's so much work you did, because one of my questions I had, but you already went into that a bit, like other stuff. You did so much more in the 80s than Mask. You
Yeah.
know, and you already meant Real Ghostbusters. You've
Mhm.
been on Popples, Dennis the Menace.
Oh, you would love doing Dennis the Menace, because I did the little Italian girl,
Mm.
Gina, the one that he liked. He didn't like the girl with the curls, right? But he liked Gina, the little Italian girl. So I did the little Italian girl. They called me in specifically to do the little Italian girl, and then they said, once I was there, they said, we'd like you to do all the children. And the very first child that showed up was a little Japanese boy. And I thought, okay, I'm doing Gina, but there's this little Japanese boy. Oh, Japanese, and he's a boy. But that's a challenge. That's a good challenge. You never say I can't do it. Never, because you can. You just have
Mm.
to try. You just have to. You create it here, and then it works here. It does.
It
And
does. It does.
it
Yeah.
was that was great fun. Dennis the Menace was great fun to do. Popples was not that much fun, because they were all pretty much the same.
Hmm.
And what else? Oh, but I tell you this, back to what I told you about before about Red Sonja.
Hmm.
I loved doing that, because the woman that I was doing had been, I told you, had been shot with an arrow. She was
Yeah.
dying, right? So she's going, oh, right? So I have to be able to match all of those little things like
Yeah.
that, and still make it so that we can understand what she's saying. And it was the first thing I did when I came to town, the very first thing. So that reminded me, even before we did uh, this series, that reminded me, keep your instrument sharp
Yeah.
all the time, because you never know what's going to come up.
So true. Yeah. The 80s was definitely a wonderful decade for us as kids to grow up. I think it's probably one of the best decades to grow up in as a kid, the
Mhm.
80s. What defines that decade for you? How do you look back on it now?
The 80s, the 80s were a very busy time for us. Uh, I don't know why. It's almost as though it seems sort of mushrooming. But
Mm.
we were in Canada at that time, right? And everything seemed to just mushroom, because we had opportunities for stage, movies, TV, radio, billboards. What else? What else is there? At least those five different things. So there's something always going. Uh, I visit Canada every summer, right? Every
Mm.
autumn. And I still get more work in Canada than I do in the United States. Now, it's a
Mm.
smaller country, right? So there aren't as many of us. We're not competing all the time, but they still do all those things. Mostly in California. I'm not sure what about the rest of the country, but in California, most of it is film and TV. So you don't get much stage work here. And
Mm.
stage work is where you really build yourself and you make yourself the kind of person that you can remember. Oh, no, I got to tell you one thing. This has
Yeah.
nothing to do with what we're talking about. Brendan and I were doing a play. We did about 7 plays together before we ever got together.
Yeah.
And the first time, that we were working together, the director said to us, "Okay, that was fine." He said, I want you to go in the back room and I want you to practice doing a Gregorian chant." And so Brendan said, he's a total stranger. He said to me, "Well, come back, Sharon." And he says, "I'll teach you how to do a Gregorian chant." And my back went up. And I said, "Let's go back to the back room and I'll teach you how to do a Gregorian chant." And that was our relationship for a long time.
Mm.
A long time. The very first time that we met, and I'm sure this has nothing to do with the TV series, but it's funny.
It
Um,
is.
I arrived. We were going to do a play, and I arrived at the hotel, and my room was not ready yet. And so the director said, "Well, look, let's see if we can not find another place for you." And they said, "Well, there's an actor who has not arrived yet. His room is ready. Mine was still being cleaned." So they said, "You can just go and sit in his room until he arrives, and that way maybe your room will be ready by then." So I went and I sat, and in a short while they brought him in, and he said hello, and he went over and sat on his bed, which is right against the wall. And I was sitting at the front door, all across the room from him. And we're just talking. My name is this, and your name is that, and I do this, and and he was sitting on the bed and he was doing this. And I thought, is there something wrong with me? Why is he looking at me so funny like that? And all the time that he was looking at me like that, he said, "I have no time for women in my life. There's no room for a woman in my life because I have things to go, places to go, things to do, and I'm an actor. So there's no room for a woman. There's no, definitely, I don't want a woman in my life. I'll never get married. No." And I said, "You'll never get married." He said, "No, never get married because there's just no room for a woman in my life." And so, right. And so I said, "Okay, well, that's fine with me. I don't care. What do you do?" And I said, "You're going to, tomorrow morning, you've worked here before, and there was snow up to your eyeballs." And I said, I can't walk in snow because I grew up in Florida, which I did, Texas and Florida. And I said, "Will you walk with me to the theater tomorrow?" And he said, "All right, I'll walk with you, but you can't hold my arm and you have to walk at my pace." And I said, "Okay." I said, "We'll walk together." I said, "No, I will hold your arm and you will walk at my pace." And he liked that because he said he didn't like a passive woman. And he told me just a few years, not a few months before he died, he said, "Do you know what I was thinking that day in the hotel when I was doing all that looking?" I said, "No, I thought there was something wrong with me." And he said, "No, I was thinking to myself, oh my God, I could marry that woman." And I found that so beautiful coming from him. He was that kind of a person. That's who he was. He was
Yeah,
just,
definitely.
and he loved everybody. He said to me one time, I said, "Why do you spend your time with this stupid guy who has nothing to say, doesn't know anything, blah, blah, blah?" And he said, "Bobo, he is one of God's children." He said, "He has the sunshine. He has sunshine." And he said, "Everybody needs to be loved." And I'm thinking, okay, fine. All right. Everybody needs to be loved. And I felt stupid because he's telling me everybody, of course, everybody needs love, but that's who he was.
Mm.
That's important for his viewers to know that that's the kind of a man that he was.
Yeah, yeah.
Everybody. And there was a time when Mark had some sort of problem with his apartment. I've forgotten what it was. And Brendan said, "Oh, come on, we have an extra bedroom. Stay with
Hmm.
us. Stay with us all summer." Um, and that was fine. Everybody needs to be loved, and he was the one who loved them all. So that's who he was. Sorry, I keep thinking about that whenever we work. I think about that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful story, and I think for the watchers, I think this is a beautiful story to end the show with.
Okay.
I want to ask you if you have any other words for our watchers you'd like to share with us, or anything you want to come back up we talked about, or to add to that.
I will tell you and all of the viewers this, even if they've never seen the series, that we are very proud of what we did. We did what we wanted to do. We achieved what we wanted to achieve. We don't look back and say, oh gee, we didn't do a good job there. Everything that we made mistakes on, we made the mistakes in the studio, and we said, what is it going to take to make it better? So that everything that we do is the best that we can do. And we loved doing it.
Mhm.
We loved it. We still love it. We still talk about it. We still wish we could do it again. And if we had the opportunity, we would go right back in the studio and we would do it all over again.
And we thank you for it, because we kids of the 80s, and there's a lot of us out there, and I hope a lot of you watching this are going to enjoy this chat we had.
Yeah.
That's, yeah, wonderful day, wonderful decade. And I believe as long as we kids of the 80s are here still, the people who were there in the 80s are still here. The 80s are never really gone. It's here
Oh,
inside of us.
it's right. That's
It's
right.
a wonderful decade. It's not a
Yeah.
time, it's a place where you came from. You take it with you in your heart.
Hmm.
So it's always here. And I want to thank you, Sharon, so much for your time,
Oh, you're so welcome.
for a chat. And
Well, thank you so much for this. I really enjoyed it. I really did. It touches me. It
yeah,
makes me cry. It does.
thank you. It's been fun. Time flew by. We've been chatting for 1.5 hours now. So
Really.
it's
Oh,
it's
so
uh,
we have.
it's wonderful. Always wonderful chatting with you. And um, for our watchers for today's episode, thank you so much for tuning in. Chasing 80s Toys, as always, will be back with more fun content for you to enjoy. So I hope to see each and every one of you on the next one. Here's Sharon and Chris saying bye bye.
Bye bye.